And we are back on the 0 hour. This is RJ Eskow, Richard Eskow, and big question of the day in New Jersey. Are we going from Bridgegate to Schoolgate? Is something rotten in the state of New Jersey? Here to talk about that with us is Randi Weingarten. Randi Weingarten is president of the American Federation of Teachers, AFL-CIO. The AFT champions fairness, democracy, economic opportunity, and high-quality public education, healthcare, and public services for students, their families, and communities. President Weingarten, thanks so much for being with us.
It is great to be with you, and I'm so glad to be talking about Newark.
Well, yeah, what's going on there? You wrote a letter to the governor that said, Governor, you have complete and total control over the schools. At the very least, your superintendent has the obligation to listen to the people of Newark. What is going on?
So the governor picked the wrong person for the job as Newark superintendent. Now, this is being a superintendent of a big city school district is a hard job. But part of the job is not just to be or to pretend to be the smartest person in the room. Part of the job is to actually listen to the people for whom you have a fiduciary obligation. And that's the people of Newark and their kids. And so this last, activity by Tammy Anderson, after she suspended principals who disagreed with her, tried to waive a contract or pieces of a contract that she just negotiated and we announced with great fanfare, and now just won't even listen or even sit in a meeting seeking public comment from the advisory school board in Newark. So there's something really wrong with the fact that in public education, which is a public good for the people, by the people, that the person in charge has turned her back on the Newark schools. And so since she's been appointed by the governor, and he has total and complete authority over this district, I wrote him a letter saying, do something. Don't just allow this to happen.
Well, let's go back a step, if we might. How is it that a governor appoints a school superintendent in a major city? I think most of our listeners don't think that's how the system works.
Well, it isn't how the system works. The only reason that Newark is under state control was back in 2005. The legislature laid out 5 benchmarks for the district to retain or to regain control. The only time that districts lose control in New York, Newark, or New Jersey, other places, under state education law, is if they are supposedly in such terrible shape that someone has to take them over. And this is what the real kicker is. Twice, in 2011 and 2013, the Newark community met the requirements that the state legislature set out in 2006. But under Chris Christie, the outgoing superintendent, who's leaving as of today, Commissioner Chris Surf, kept on changing the bar. So that has created huge frustration in the city anyway, because the city's trajectory has been for its schools to be getting better. It was an avid school district. There's been a lot of fiscal issues. Schools were getting better, and a lot of us were actually doing reforms that were taking hold, including bringing a newcomer program for new immigrants, having something called a global village, where we were putting wraparound services and having the schools themselves making their own terms and conditions of employment. And all of this, Tammy Anderson dismantled when she became the superintendent of schools. So this has been brewing for a long time, this angst with the community, but it's now gotten to this heightened space because the superintendent, Tammy Anderson, in December, says we're going to revamp the entire city and have what we call a One Newark plan. And the One Newark plan is anything but One Newark. It's turning over neighborhood schools to charter school operators. It's converting campuses to charters. It's having basically, instead of a system of neighborhood schools, it's having basically a system where the charter schools will become the dominant schools and where there'll be one enrollment, and basically there'll be a situation where the neighborhoods in Newark will end up being eclipsed by whatever charter processes are going on.
Well, I don't want to lead you down a path you don't want to go to, so I will express although you may, so I will express this as my own reaction to the situation, which is I can't help but draw a parallel between this and, for example, what's going on in Detroit and elsewhere in Michigan and in Vallejo and other places where municipalities are declared incapable of managing their own affairs democratically at the local level, which, by the way, is supposed to be a fundamental conservative principle of self-governance at the local level. They are, in the pattern, take it or leave it, is largely minority. Municipalities are declared incapable of self-governance. They're taken over according to a shifting set of rules. Also seems a parallel by Republicans who then begin to use their newly acquired power to impose what appear to me to be ideological changes, whether if it's in Detroit, stripping away the pension system, or if in New York, moving the system sharply toward charter schools. It seems to me as if there's a pattern here of loss of local governance for ideological reasons. You care to react to that at all?
No, it's absolutely. So this started, there were, I would argue, legitimate reasons for the state takeover in the mid-2000s. And so, there was a set of facts, and there was legitimate reasons. There was a lot of issues going on, including poverty, the lack of efficacy in terms of how that system was managed. Having said that, what's happened is that in both 11 and 13, instead of actually giving Newark back its schools, the then new governor of New Jersey did exactly what the current governor of Michigan is doing, which is basically sending a signal that the locality, which is basically democratic, cannot control its own situation, and keeping it in the hands of Republican control. And now this new superintendent dismantling virtually everything that is very much local to Newark. But many of the things that she's put into place actually haven't worked. The schools, the reorganization that she's done in schools that were being turned around, actually those schools are now in worse shape than they were beforehand. So we had a turnaround process in place that our local and NYU and others did together. She threw that out, put in her turnaround plan, and now the schools are in worse shape. And the charters that are going to take over, Rutgers University has found that they do know better than the schools that are there right now. So I think that your premise is right, that this is a divestment of local control by citizens that very much want their schools back for ideological reasons.
Well, it sounds like the school superintendent may need to have her performance measured according to some objective criteria, and
certainly you have to learn how to. You have to. If you're a school superintendent, you actually have to play well with others, and you have to work with the people who you are appointed to serve.
Well, people forget that sometimes that these are not dictatorial roles. These are leadership roles, and leadership involves collaboration, conversation, and sharing. So, President Weingarten, I'm so glad that you are on top of this story. I hope you will come back and speak with us again sometime, and thanks so much for joining us.
It'd be my pleasure, and have a great weekend.
Thank you. You too. I'm RJ Eskow, and we will be back with more. And by the way, final thought: Chris Christie, operating out of the ALEC playbook, not the centrist he claims to be. That was President Randi Weingarten of the American Federation of Teachers, and we will be right back after this.